Welcome back to the Rock Your Soul podcast. I'm Nichole Eaton, author of the book Rock Your Soul, The Down-to-Earth Guide to Mastering Your Mind and Intuitive Therapist. And I'm here to remind you of your power and that it's absolutely possible to live a life you're obsessed with. Let me show you how. We are almost out of retrograde, and as we come to a close in this retrograde season, I wanted to talk a little bit about healing. I've had a lot of clients come to me, and we've had a lot of great conversations about the truths about what healing means for your life and what it looks like and what it might look like that is uncomfortable or ways it might show up in your life that you weren't expecting. So we're going to demystify the experience, and we're going to talk about the truth about learning to love yourself. Listen, I love more than anybody that we're talking about healing in an open way, that you can go on Instagram or you can go on TikTok and you can find these gorgeous videos of people taking care of themselves. Except for this has kind of gotten to a space where people are doing it for the aesthetic rather than the effect. And that's where we can get really fucked up, because if I'm looking at your healing and it looks pretty, and mine looks messy, that may make things worse for me. Because the truth about healing is that it's messy. It's really honest. And a lot of times when we're healing, it means coming to some truths and arriving at truths that we may or may not be ready to hear or may not be ready to take action on. Because a lot of our truth and a lot of our healing may require us to change. It may require us to leave jobs or leave relationships. It may require us to act in a different way than we've been acting. It may require us to be more isolated or independent for a few. It may require us to get out more. It may be tricky and hard. So the truth about allowing it to be kind of messy, and I wouldn't say expecting it to be, but giving permission for it to be a little chaotic, giving permission for it to look messy, giving permission to cry when you feel like crying. Those are the really tough things about healing that are not going to show up on your Instagram feed. We're not going to see somebody in the pits of their shadow work where we're approaching things that we didn't want to approach anyway. Okay. So giving yourself permission that it's okay if yours doesn't look as pretty as somebody on a social media platform. The second thing you have to realize, and the second truth, I guess, about healing and about finding your self-love, is that you may become heightened aware of family dynamics. This might mean that the systems that you grew up in, the family members that you have, the relationships you have, even as an adult, you might realize that these are healthy or unhealthy. You may realize that you may need to set firmer boundaries with people around you. And you also may need to realize that your parents weren't maybe who you thought they were. And that can be a really challenging feeling, to look at your parents who, when you were a kid, you thought they had it together. And maybe you realize that they made some mistakes that deeply impacted you. And so another truth of healing and self-love comes with being willing to forgive. And this is something you have to be ready for. This is something that you may have to take some time to come to a place where you're ready. And that may also be forgiving yourself for situations you put yourself in, for ways you acted, for ways you reacted. Forgiveness is part of healing, and it comes with both for you, towards you, and towards others. So this might look like, in that honest, messy space, writing down, where am I holding resentment? Where do I hold it in my body? Who do I hold it against? And what would it take to truly let go of that? What would I need in order to be able to release that from my experience, from my physical body? And so that may look like reparenting yourselves. The holistic psychologist on Instagram, Nichole, she talks a lot about this I believe she has a new book coming out, or maybe it is already out. But she has a book called How to Do the Work. And reparenting is the ability to treat yourself as though you wish your parents treated you. It's the ability to really take care of yourself. It's the ability to make sure you get enough food and enough sleep. And get those basic needs met, and to be able to get out of your head and back into your body, to be able to pull your energy in the present moment. And she does such beautiful work on that. So I highly, highly recommend checking her out, Dr. Nichole, the holistic psychologist on Instagram, has so many good pieces of information about reparenting and healing, especially if you've come to recognize that a family dynamic was messy. Another truth about healing is that it's not always linear. You might have a great year. You might have a great 18 months, and then you might feel triggered by things again. This isn't a sign that you're back to the beginning. This isn't a sign that you're sliding backwards. This is an awareness whenever you catch the feeling or the awareness that you don't want to be in that position anymore. You don't want to feel those things. You have permission to change. But I want you to be careful about beating yourself up when it comes to recognizing that, I've been doing really, really well, and I feel like I'm sliding backwards. A lot of healing requires holding compassion for yourself, taking a deep breath, and then starting again. And that is one of the most powerful things you can do. It's like, if you drop your phone on the floor, you don't step on it. You just dust it off, pick it up, and make sure it's okay. And this is kind of what we're doing with you in the healing process, is that we're not stepping on it after we dropped it. We're not creating more shame and guilt and sadness and distress by saying, oh, you really fucked up. And look, you're back where you're back at square one. If you have awareness, you are never back at square one. Square one comes without any kind of awareness, that you just automatically go through this reactive way of living. Having awareness in and of itself is healing. It's a progress moment. And so anytime you're able to catch, oof, I don't like that I did that. I don't like that I reacted in that way. That's not how I want to react. That doesn't feel good to me. We can take a deep breath, hold compassion for that, be grateful for your awareness, and say, okay, what's next? How do I move forward from this? But giving yourself permission that sliding backwards doesn't mean you're not making progress. It's just part of human nature. We are chutes and ladders kind of, humans. We slide up, or we climb up and we slide down a little, and that's okay. And as long as we keep going forward instead of giving up, that's where we make our real movement in our life. That's where we really see things begin to shift. Another truth is that you might find you don't really know yourself as well as you thought. When you're in the process of healing, you may emerge a whole different version, a more freer version, a more confident version, a more outgoing version, a more sure of yourself version, a version that doesn't put up with people's crap, a version that doesn't stay in situations longer. You might go from going out and partying to wanting to do more self-care at home. You might have to get to know yourself and the stories that you tell yourself about yourself in order to really move forward, in order to make your next step. And so that may come with getting quiet, doing some journal prompts, giving yourself the reflection to learn about who you are and how you show up in the world, and who you are and how you'd like to show up in the world. I think one of the biggest traps we can get in is believing that this is just how we are and this is how it's going to be, and that is what it is. And I think that is the most dangerous. I was thinking earlier that when you're a kid, they talk about quicksand a lot. There's a lot of talk about quicksand, and as an adult, we don't really encounter it, but we feel ready and prepared. So this is one of those moments where it helps you stay out of the quicksand of life, is to really know yourself. And when you really know yourself, you don't typically put yourself in situations that don't work for you. So this is kind of one of those things that the more you get to know yourself, the more prepared you are to climb out of past quicksand, if that makes sense. And then lastly, and I mentioned this briefly earlier, is that one of the biggest truths about healing that isn't talked about enough is that the more we heal ourselves, the more we realize that some relationships are working and some aren't. I think that can be really challenging when we're in the process, because making big changes can feel really scary. But I think that this is one of the most important things, that as we as we heal, we can recognize, some of these things are not in alignment. The more we get in alignment with ourselves, the more we know ourselves, the easier it is actually to make choices about what belongs and what doesn't. That's actually one of my favorite life hacks, is that if you are very clear about who you are and what you desire, then everything will feel like a stronger yes or a stronger no. Everything presented to you. If you tell yourself that you're confident, that you only accept people into your life who treat you well, who treat you with kindness, who help you feel thought of and loved, and then something opposite presents itself, that is going to be a very quick no, I don't do that. I'm not that kind of person. So that's when it comes to confidence and when it comes to healing, that's one of my favorite hacks, right? Is to get into a space where we're like, no, this is who I am. And I'm really sure that I don't want that, because I know what I do want, because I've reminded myself daily of what I want. I'm very clear within myself, and I'm very sure about what I want. And I'm very connected with the universe. And I know the universe delivers what I want when I surrender to it, when I trust it enough to not try to control every single thing. Another truth about healing is that a lot of times people use manifestation as a means of control, and honestly, like even tarot and readings. And one of the reasons I stepped away from traditional intuition in traditional intuition sessions is because you have to really come to your own and learn to trust your own universe inside of you. You really have to trust yourself and really tune into your own intuition. And I think that when we try to hope for a certain outcome and draw the same tarot card 25 times just to see what it will say, deep down, you know the answer. And I think that these kind of tools, and sometimes some ways people teach manifestation, is about trying to control the universe rather than trusting it. And I think the true sign of healing is being able to trust it, and trust that it knows what it's doing, and trust that it will deliver it to you in divine timing, and allowing anything that's not that to go, allowing any sense of control over how that has to happen, what that has to look like, to go. And I think that's the most powerful thing that you can do, and the most powerful place you can be in is in the surrender position, where you're just allowing the universe to support you, to guide you, and going with the flow. I think that's another sign and truth about healing, is that when you're not controlling things, you're able to shift with the wind. You're able to allow it not to toss you around, but to know what direction to go next, and not have to have a full plan laid out every time. Big goals and big plans are fantastic, but giving ourselves permission to see what's next and not have to know, man, there's some freedom in that. There's some beautiful, beautiful freedom in that. So I hope that this was helpful, just in some ideas around being able to recognize that, healing isn't always what we think it is. And another thing too is, a lot of people are like, yeah, I'm all done healing. I'm all healed up. And I would say kudos. I'm really glad that there's scenarios and situations and feelings in your life that feel better. I think that as we grow and have experienced this, there's always more things that we find to address or to work through. I'm not saying you're on a never-ending healing journey, but I think self-discovery can feel like healing, and it can feel like that process. And so sometimes, again, when we identify that healing isn't linear, and it's not we land at this point, then we get into a space where we can recognize and appreciate the process for what it is of, oh, I get to heal a little bit more. I get to heal a little bit more things as I uncover more about myself, as I meet people who inspire things within me or inspire feelings within me. And the more I do that, the better I feel. And even when I'm feeling really good, I still may be healing things. I still may be tapping into my self-love. I still may be growing my self-love. And there are times where I've really believed I've loved myself, and then it gets taken to a whole new level. That for me is healing. So yeah, give yourself compassion through the process. Give yourself wiggle room with the truth. Give yourself flexibility, and hone in on your honesty of what's true for you, what's working, what's no longer working, and give yourself permission to, drop your phone, pick it up, brush it off instead of stepping on it and creating guilt and shame around any scenarios where you're not moving completely all the way up the ladder, okay? I am sending you all love. I'm sending you all light, and I am setting the intention that this reached the right audience. If you feel called to share this with somebody that you love. I'm working on growing this podcast to its full potential this year. If you feel this was valuable, I'd love for you to share or leave me a positive review. Share with somebody who needs to hear it, screenshot and tag me on Instagram, and make sure you keep an eye out for my latest book, Rock Your Comeback, The Down-to-Earth Guide to Reclaiming Your Power. I'm hoping to have it in your hands soon. I'd love to connect with you, so make sure to give me a follow on Instagram or TikTok at NicholeEaton.xo. Thanks for listening to the Rock Your Soul podcast. I hope you're feeling inspired, motivated, and ready to take on the world. Now go step back into your power. The world's been waiting for you.